Lawrence Hunter's heart races as he stands before the sealed airlock of the Sheliak diplomatic facility. The alien world's intense gravity presses down on him, a constant reminder of his foreign status. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the crucial interspecies negotiation ahead. As Earth's chosen diplomat, the weight of humanity's future rests on his shoulders. The airlock hisses open, revealing a sterile white chamber. Lawrence steps inside, his eyes widening as he sees his Sheliak counterpart for the first time. Xena, a high-ranking official, stands before him. Her bioluminescent skin pulses with subtle patterns, casting a soft glow in the room. Lawrence notes her androgynous form, devoid of any visible genitalia, a stark contrast to human anatomy. "Welcome to Sheliak's, Ambassador Hunter," Xena says, her voice a melodious hum. "We are honored to host Earth's first diplomatic mission to our world." Lawrence nods, feeling a bead of sweat form on his brow. The gravity is already taking its toll. "The honor is ours, Xena. Earth looks forward to fostering a strong alliance with the Sheliak people." As they move to a private meeting room, Lawrence fights the urge to adjust his clothing. The pressure on his lower body is becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Once seated, he discreetly shifts in his chair, hoping to alleviate the discomfort without drawing attention. Xena begins to outline the proposed terms of their alliance, her luminous eyes fixed on Lawrence. He listens intently, aware of the monumental importance of this meeting. Humanity's standing in the galactic community hangs in the balance. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through Lawrence's leg. He winces, instinctively reaching to adjust his pants. In his haste, he inadvertently exposes himself to Xena. Time seems to freeze as Xena's eyes lock onto Lawrence's exposed genitalia. Her bioluminescent skin flares bright red, a clear sign of distress. Then, without warning, she lets out a piercing scream that echoes through the facility. Alarms blare to life, their shrill wail mixing with Xena's continued screams. Lawrence scrambles to cover himself, his face burning with embarrassment and shock. "Xena, I can explain," he starts, but it's too late. The door bursts open as Sheliak security forces rush in, their weapons trained on Lawrence. In their eyes, this strange alien has just attacked their respected official. Lawrence raises his hands, his heart pounding. "This is a misunderstanding," he shouts over the chaos. But his words fall on deaf ears. The security forces swarm him, their grip firm as they detain Earth's sole representative on Sheliak's. As they drag him away, Lawrence catches a glimpse of Xena, her form trembling and her skin still pulsing an alarming red. In mere moments, a simple anatomical difference has spiraled into a full-blown diplomatic crisis. As Lawrence is led to a holding cell, he realizes the magnitude of what has just transpired. Earth-Sheliak relations, so carefully cultivated, now hang by a thread. Back on Earth, news of the incident spreads like wildfire. Government officials scramble to assemble a special task force, their mission now to educate the Sheliaks on human biology and cultural norms. The human population reacts with a mix of embarrassment, amusement, and deep concern for their species' future in the stars. On Sheliaks, debates rage among the alien population. Can they truly ally themselves with beings so physiologically different? As both sides grapple with the fallout, one thing becomes clear: the path to interstellar understanding will be far more complex than anyone could have imagined. As the diplomatic crisis unfolded on Sheliaks, Earth's government sprang into action. Within hours of receiving news of Lawrence Hunter's detainment, they assembled a special task force to address the cultural misunderstanding. At the forefront of this effort was Dr. Eliza Hartwell, a renowned xenobiologist whose expertise in comparative anatomy made her the ideal candidate to bridge the gap between human and Sheliak physiology. Dr. Hartwell's transport ship cut through the inky blackness of space, its engines humming as it approached the alien world. She spent the journey reviewing the scant information available on Sheliak biology, her mind racing with questions and potential explanations for their extreme reaction to human anatomy. Upon landing, Dr. Hartwell was immediately escorted to a secure facility where Lawrence was being held. The gravity pressed down on her, but years of off-world research had prepared her for such conditions. As she entered the sterile holding area, she saw Lawrence sitting on a bench, his face etched with worry and fatigue. Dr. Hartwell, Lawrence said, rising to greet her. I can't tell you how relieved I am to see you. Ambassador Hunter, she replied, her voice steady and professional. I'm here to help, but first I need to conduct a thorough examination and get your account of what happened. For the next few hours, Dr. Hartwell meticulously documented Lawrence's physical condition, paying special attention to the anatomical features that had caused such distress to the Sheliaks. As she worked, Lawrence recounted the events leading to his detainment, his voice tinged with embarrassment and frustration. I never imagined a simple physiological difference could cause such a catastrophe, Lawrence said, shaking his head. I've jeopardized everything we've worked for. Dr. Hartwell looked up from her notes, her expression softening. Ambassador, this is precisely why I'm here. We're going to turn this misunderstanding into an opportunity for mutual understanding and growth. Meanwhile, in another part of the facility, Xena underwent a rigorous psychological evaluation. The Sheliak medical team, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with concentration, pored over data from brain scans and behavioral tests. Their conclusion was unexpected. Xena's extreme reaction was rooted in a previously undiagnosed phobia of external reproductive organs. This revelation sent ripples through the Sheliak government. High-ranking officials debated Xena's fitness for her diplomatic role, their discussions punctuated by flashes of bioluminescent communication. Back in her assigned quarters, Dr. Hartwell worked tirelessly to prepare her presentation. She created intricate holographic models of human anatomy, each one designed to demystify the aspects of human physiology that had caused such alarm. Her report delved into the evolutionary reasons for external genitalia, drawing parallels with other species across the galaxy to provide context. As news of the incident spread, the Sheliak scientific community buzzed with excitement. Researchers from various fields clamored for access to Dr. Hartwell's findings, seeing it as a unique opportunity to expand their understanding of alien biology. The day before the presentation, Dr. Hartwell was surprised by a request from Xena to attend the session. Despite her recent trauma, the Sheliak diplomat was determined to face her fears and fulfill her duty. Impressed by her courage, Xena's superiors granted her request, but assigned a personal counselor to monitor her emotional state during the presentation. As the crucial day dawned, tension hung thick in the air. Dr. Hartwell stood before a panel of Sheliak scientists and diplomats, their luminous eyes fixed upon her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Lawrence sat to one side, his fate hanging on the outcome of this presentation. Esteemed colleagues, Dr. Hartwell began, her voice clear and confident. Today, we have an unprecedented opportunity to bridge the gap between our species through shared knowledge and understanding. With a gesture, she activated the first holographic model, a detailed representation of human anatomy. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience, their skin flickering with a kaleidoscope of colors. What you see before you is the result of millions of years of evolution, Dr. Hartwell explained, zooming in on specific areas of the hologram. Just as your bioluminescent skin serves vital functions in Sheliak society, each aspect of human anatomy plays a crucial role in our biology and culture. As she delved deeper into her presentation, the initial shock among the Sheliak audience gave way to fascination. Questions flew rapid fire, each one more insightful than the last. Dr. Hartwell fielded them with practiced ease, her extensive knowledge shining through. Xena, seated in the back of the room with her counselor, listened intently. Her initial discomfort gradually eased as understanding dawned. By the time Dr. Hartwell concluded her presentation, Xena's skin had settled into a calm, steady glow. The Sheliak panel conferred briefly, their skin pulsing in silent communication. Then the lead scientist stepped forward, his voice a melodious hum. Dr. Hartwell, your presentation has been most illuminating. We propose a joint research initiative to further explore the fascinating field of comparative xenobiology. A wave of relief washed over Lawrence. As the Sheliak scientists eagerly discussed potential areas of study with Dr. Hartwell, he realized that what had begun as a diplomatic disaster might have opened the door to an even deeper alliance between their species. But as the excitement in the room grew, Lawrence couldn't help but notice a group of Sheliak officials huddled in the corner, their skin pulsing with rapid, agitated patterns. It was clear that not everyone was as enthusiastic about this new direction in human-Shellyak relations. As the excitement in the room grew, Lawrence couldn't help but notice a group of Shellyak officials huddled in the corner, their skin pulsing with rapid, agitated patterns. It was clear that not everyone was as enthusiastic about this new direction in human-Shellyak relations. Before Lawrence could ponder this further, Dr. Hartwell began her crucial presentation. The conference room fell silent as she activated the holographic projector, filling the space with detailed images of human anatomy. Esteemed colleagues, Dr. Hartwell began, her voice steady and clear, today we embark on a journey of mutual understanding and scientific discovery. The Shellyak audience watched with a mixture of fascination and discomfort as Dr. Hartwell expertly navigated through the holographic representations of human bodies. Their luminous skin flickered with a kaleidoscope of colors, reflecting their varied emotional responses. Lawrence, still under guard but permitted to attend, sat near the back of the room. He watched as Xena entered, accompanied by her counselor, and took a seat not far from him. Despite her obvious nervousness, evidenced by the rapid pulsing of her bioluminescent skin, Xena's eyes remained fixed on the holographic display. As Dr. Hartwell delved deeper into her explanation of human physiology, Lawrence noticed Xena's posture gradually relaxing. Her initial trepidation seemed to give way to genuine scientific curiosity. Suddenly, a loud pop echoed through the room, followed by a shower of sparks from the holographic projector. The device had overheated, causing a small explosion that plunged the room into chaos. Shellyak officials scrambled to their feet, their skin flashing in alarm. In the confusion, Lawrence realized his guards were momentarily distracted. Without thinking, he bolted from his seat and dashed towards the exit. His heart pounded as he ran, driven by a desperate belief that his chances of a fair trial were slim. As Lawrence burst into the corridor, he heard a commotion behind him. Glancing back, he saw Xena in pursuit, her lithe form moving with surprising speed. Lawrence pushed himself harder, his muscles straining against the planet's intense gravity. He raced through the labyrinthine corridors of the Shellyak facility, each turn bringing him deeper into unknown territory. Alarms blared, their shrill wails adding to the growing sense of panic. Lawrence's breath came in ragged gasps as he searched frantically for an exit. Behind him, Xena called out in her melodious language, but Lawrence couldn't understand her words. He rounded another corner and found himself face to face with a sealed door. As he fumbled with the unfamiliar controls, Xena caught up to him. "Stop!" she shouted in accented English, her skin pulsing with exertion and agitation. Before Lawrence could respond, the door slid open. Acting on instinct, he darted through the opening, with Xena close behind. As soon as they crossed the threshold, a loud hiss filled the air. The door slammed shut behind them, and a computerized voice announced, "Quarantine protocol initiated. Decontamination sequence commencing." Lawrence spun around, taking in their new surroundings. They were in a stark white room filled with strange equipment and sealed containers. Realization dawned on him. They had stumbled into a restricted area, likely used for studying potentially hazardous alien life forms. Xena's skin flashed with alarm as she examined the sealed door. "We are trapped," she said, her voice tinged with fear and frustration. "This chamber, it is designed to contain unknown biological entities. The decontamination process will take hours to complete." Lawrence slumped against the wall, the gravity of their situation sinking in. He was now trapped in close quarters with the very being he had unintentionally traumatized. As the initial adrenaline of the chase wore off, an awkward silence fell between them. After several tense moments, Lawrence cleared his throat. "Xena," he began hesitantly, "I want to apologize for what happened earlier. It was never my intention to cause you distress." Xena's luminous eyes fixed on Lawrence, her skin pulsing with a complex pattern of colors. She seemed to be wrestling with her own emotions, caught between her lingering fear and her diplomatic training. I understand it was not intentional," Xena replied slowly, "but I still struggle to comprehend your physiology. It is so alien to us." Lawrence nodded, reaching for the basic translation device he had been allowed to keep. He activated it, hoping to bridge the language gap and facilitate a deeper conversation. Perhaps we can use this time to learn from each other, Lawrence suggested. I can try to explain human anatomy in a way that's less shocking, and I'd be very interested to learn more about celiac biology as well. Zena's skin shifted to a softer hue, indicating a cautious openness to the idea. That would be acceptable, she said, but please, proceed slowly. This is still difficult for me. As they settled into their forced proximity, Lawrence began a careful explanation of human biology, using simple terms and avoiding any sudden movements. Zena listened attentively, occasionally interjecting with questions or comparisons to celiac physiology. Outside the quarantine chamber, alarms continued to blare. Dr. Hartwell, having regained her composure after the projector malfunction, now found herself facing a new crisis. She hurried to join the celiac scientists who were already working to override the chamber's lockdown protocols. "We must act quickly," one of the celiac researchers said, his skin pulsing with urgency. "The chamber's life support systems are not calibrated for human physiology. Your Ambassador Hunter could be in danger if we don't extract him soon." Dr. Hartwell's mind raced as she assessed the situation. What had begun as a diplomatic incident had now evolved into a potential medical emergency. She knew that the next few hours would be crucial, not just for Lawrence's safety, but for the future of human celiac relations. As the rescue efforts intensified outside, Lawrence and Zena continued their halting dialogue within the chamber. With each passing minute, the initial awkwardness between them began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of mutual understanding. The gentle hum of the chamber's life support systems provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation, lulling them into a false sense of security. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. The abrupt silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of their startled gasps. "What's happening?" Lawrence asked, his voice tight with alarm. Zena's bioluminescent skin pulsed rapidly, casting an eerie glow in the pitch-black chamber. "The power has failed," she replied, her normally melodious voice tinged with worry. "This should not be possible. Our facilities have multiple redundancies." As if in response to her words, a computerized voice crackled through the chamber's speakers, its message fragmented and distorted. "Emergency proto? Initiated. Life support compromised. Estimated time to critical failure. 4 hours." Lawrence felt a chill run down his spine, and not just from the rapidly dropping temperature. He could already feel the air growing thin, each breath becoming more labored. "We need to find a way out of here," he said, trying to keep the panic from his voice. Zena's skin flashed in agreement. "The rescue teams will be working to restore power, but we cannot rely solely on external help. We must take action to ensure our survival." Lawrence nodded, then realized Zena might not be able to see the gesture in the dark. "Agreed," he said. "Let's search the chamber for anything that might help us. There must be emergency supplies or equipment stored here." They began to move cautiously through the darkness, using Zena's bioluminescence as a guide. Lawrence's hands skimmed over various surfaces, feeling for anything that might be useful. The cold was intensifying, and he could feel his fingers growing numb. After several minutes of searching, Lawrence's hand brushed against something smooth and cylindrical. "I think I've found something," he called out to Zena. As he explored the object further, he realized it was a container of some sort. With fumbling fingers, he managed to unlatch it, revealing its contents. "It's some kind of suit," Lawrence said, running his hands over the strange material. "Zena, can you come take a look at this?" Zena glided over, her luminous skin providing just enough light to examine the suit. Her eyes widened in recognition. "This is an experimental environmental suit," she explained. "It's designed to withstand extreme conditions, but—" She trailed off, her skin pulsing with uncertainty. "But what?" Lawrence prompted. "It's calibrated for celiac physiology," Zena finished, "and it appears to be too small for your human form." Lawrence's heart sank momentarily, but then an idea struck him. "What if you wear it?" he suggested. "At least one of us would be protected from the failing life support systems." Zena's skin flashed with a complex pattern of colors, reflecting her inner turmoil. The idea of encasing herself in the suit, especially with Lawrence's help, clearly made her uncomfortable. But as another shudder ran through the chamber and the air grew thinner, she realized they had no choice. "Very well," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will wear the suit." What followed was an awkward dance of limbs and adjustments as Lawrence helped Xena into the complex suit. Despite the seriousness of their situation, Lawrence couldn't help but feel a twinge of amusement at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a human diplomat, dressing an alien in a high-tech spacesuit in complete darkness. As Lawrence guided Xena's arm into a sleeve, his hand accidentally brushed against her bioluminescent skin. He felt her flinch at the contact, but to his surprise, she didn't pull away. Instead, her skin pulsed with a softer, almost curious pattern. "I apologize," Lawrence said quickly. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." It's all right," Xena replied, her voice muffled by the suit's helmet. "I'm beginning to understand that physical contact doesn't hold the same significance for humans as it does for Shellyacs." As they finished securing the suit, Xena began to explore the chamber with her enhanced sensory capabilities. "There's a manual override for the communication system," she announced after a few minutes. "If we can reactivate it, we might be able to contact the outside." Working together, they managed to locate and activate the override. A burst of static filled the air, followed by a familiar voice. "Lawrence? Xena? Can you hear me?" It was Dr. Hartwell, her voice tight with concern. "We hear you, Doctor," Lawrence replied, relief evident in his voice. "What's the situation out there?" Dr. Hartwell quickly filled them in on the power failure and the ongoing rescue efforts. "It could be several hours before we can get you out," she warned. "Lawrence, you need to conserve oxygen and maintain your body temperature. Try to remain calm and limit your physical activity." As the hours crawled by, Lawrence could feel his body temperature dropping dangerously low. His breaths came in short, painful gasps as the oxygen levels continued to decrease. Xena watched him with growing concern, her suit's sensors providing a grim readout of his deteriorating vital signs. Making a decision, Xena moved closer to Lawrence. "The suit has an advanced thermal regulation system," she explained. If we maintain close physical contact, I can share its warmth and recycled air supply with you." Lawrence nodded weakly, too exhausted and cold to feel awkward about the suggestion. Xena carefully wrapped her suited form around him, enveloping him in the suit's protective warmth. As his shivering subsided and his breathing eased, Lawrence found himself relaxing into the embrace. "Thank you," he murmured. "I know this must be difficult for you." Xena was silent for a moment, her skin pulsing with a thoughtful pattern beneath the suit. "Actually," she said slowly, "I find myself curious. Your physiology, while still strange to me, is fascinating up close. Would you mind if I asked you some questions about human biology?" As they waited for rescue, Lawrence and Xena engaged in a deep, if somewhat awkward discussion about their respective species. The intimacy of their position, born out of necessity, gradually transformed into a unique opportunity for interspecies understanding. Outside the chamber, the rescue teams worked tirelessly to restore power to the facility. As news of Lawrence and Xena's predicament spread, the Shellyak public's attitude began to shift. The image of a human and a Shellyak working together to survive captivated many, challenging long-held prejudices and fears. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the chamber's systems hummed back to life. The door slid open, revealing a team of anxious rescuers. As Lawrence and Xena were carefully extracted from the chamber, they exchanged a look of shared understanding. Their ordeal had forged an unexpected connection, one that held the potential to bridge the vast divide between their species. As they were led to the medical bay for evaluation, neither Lawrence nor Xena realized that their experience had set in motion a chain of events that would reshape human-Shellyak relations for years to come. The true impact of their time in the quarantine chamber was yet to be fully understood, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be quite the same again. As Lawrence and Xena were led from the quarantine chamber, the gravity of their shared experience hung between them like an invisible thread. The medical bay bustled with activity as they were ushered onto separate examination tables. the stark white lights a sharp contrast to the darkness they had endured. Lawrence winced as a medic pressed a thermal blanket against his skin, the warmth almost painful after hours of bone-chilling cold. He glanced over at Xena, who was being helped out of the environmental suit by a team of Sheliak scientists. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "Ambassador Hunter, can you hear me?" A human voice cut through the commotion. Lawrence turned to see a tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair striding towards him. "Yes, I can hear you," Lawrence replied, his voice hoarse. "I'm Admiral Victor Petrova, sent by Earth's government to oversee this situation," the man said, his piercing blue eyes scanning Lawrence's face. "How are you feeling?" "I've been better," Lawrence admitted, managing a weak smile. "But I'm alive thanks to Xena." Admiral Petrova nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Your experience has caused quite a stir, Ambassador, both here and back on Earth." Before Lawrence could respond, a Sheliak scientist approached, her skin pulsing with an urgent pattern. "Admiral, Ambassador, we need to begin immediate treatment for mild hypothermia and oxygen deprivation." As the medical team swarmed around him, Lawrence caught glimpses of Xena being led to a separate area. He could see the tension in her movements, the way her skin flickered with uncertainty as she was surrounded by decontamination equipment. Hours passed in a blur of tests, treatments, and debriefings. Lawrence found himself recounting the events in the quarantine chamber multiple times, each retelling bringing back vivid memories of the fear, the cold, and the unexpected connection he had formed with Xena. It wasn't until late in the evening that Lawrence was finally cleared to leave the medical bay. As he stepped into the corridor, he was surprised to find Xena waiting for him, her luminous skin pulsing with a soft, welcoming glow. Xena," he said, a smile spreading across his face. "How are you feeling?" "I am processing," she replied, her melodious voice tinged with a new note of curiosity. "The scientists have been most interested in the data collected during our time in the chamber. It seems our close proximity has yielded unexpected results." Lawrence raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What kind of results?" Before Xena could answer, Admiral Petrova appeared at the end of the corridor, flanked by a group of Sheliak officials. "Ambassador Hunter, Xena, if you're feeling up to it, we have a matter of great importance to discuss with you both." They were led to a large conference room where members of the Sheliak High Council were already gathered. The air was thick with anticipation as Lawrence and Xena took their seats. Admiral Petrova cleared his throat. "In light of recent events and the unprecedented level of cooperation demonstrated between you two, we have a proposal." He paused, his eyes moving between Lawrence and Xena. "We want to establish a long-term research initiative focused on human Sheliak interactions, and we'd like you both to be the primary subjects." Lawrence blinked in surprise, turning to gauge Xena's reaction. Her skin was rippling with a complex pattern he couldn't decipher. "What exactly would this involve?" Lawrence asked, leaning forward. A Sheliak scientist stepped forward, her skin pulsing with excitement. "We've designed a state-of-the-art research habitat where you would live together for an extended period. It would allow us to study your interactions in a controlled environment while ensuring your comfort and safety." Xena's luminous eyes widened. "Live together? For how long?" "Initially, we're proposing a 6-month period," Admiral Petrova replied. "Of course, this would be entirely voluntary. We understand it's a significant commitment." Lawrence's mind raced with the implications. 6 months of close quarters with Xena. Every interaction scrutinized and analyzed. It was both thrilling and daunting. "Before you decide," the Admiral continued, "you should know that this project has the potential to revolutionize human-Sheliak relations. The data we gather could pave the way for unprecedented cooperation between our species." Lawrence glanced at Xena, searching her alien features for any hint of her thoughts. To his surprise, he found he could read her better than he expected. There was apprehension there, certainly, but also a glimmer of curiosity and excitement. "I'm willing if you are," Lawrence said softly to Xena. Xena's skin pulsed with a warm, determined glow. "As am I," she replied, "for the sake of science and understanding between our peoples." Admiral Petrova nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Excellent. We'll begin preparations immediately. You'll both undergo intensive training on each other's biology and culture before entering the habitat. As the meeting adjourned, Lawrence and Xena found themselves alone in the corridor once more. The weight of their decision hung between them, full of possibility and uncertainty. "Well," Lawrence said, breaking the silence, "I guess we're going to be roommates." Xena's skin flickered with amusement. "Indeed, though I hope you don't snore, Ambassador." Lawrence laughed, the sound echoing off the sterile walls of the Sheliak complex. As they walked together towards their temporary quarters, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that he and Xena had already overcome far greater obstacles together. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Lawrence immersed himself in studying Sheliak biology and culture, marveling at the complexity of their bioluminescent communication and the intricacies of their social structures. Xena, meanwhile, delved into human physiology and social norms, her initial discomfort with human anatomy gradually giving way to fascination. As the day of their entry into the research habitat approached, Lawrence found himself standing before a massive window, gazing out at the alien landscape of Sheliaks. The habitat, a sleek structure of curves and angles, stood in stark contrast to the surrounding terrain. "Are you ready for this?" Xena's voice came from behind him. Lawrence turned to face her, taking in the subtle shifts of color across her luminous skin. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied with a smile. "How about you?" Xena's skin pulsed with a pattern that Lawrence had come to recognize as a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "I am curious," she said, "and perhaps a little apprehensive, but I believe this experience will be invaluable for both our species." As they made their way towards the habitat's entrance, flanked by a team of scientists and officials, Lawrence felt a surge of tenacity. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that he and Xena would face them together, bridging the gap between their species one day at a time. The airlock hissed open, revealing the interior of their new home for the next 6 months. Lawrence took a deep breath, exchanged one last look with Xena, and stepped forward into the unknown. Unknown. Lawrence paused at the threshold, taking in the sleek interior of their new home. The habitat was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate both human and Sheliak needs. Curved walls met angular surfaces, creating a harmonious blend of their two architectural styles. "After you," Lawrence said, gesturing for Xena to enter first. As they stepped inside, the airlock sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The main living area was bathed in a soft, ambient light that shifted subtly to accommodate Xena's bioluminescent communication. "Welcome to your new home," Dr. Eliza Hartwell's voice came through the intercom. "We'll give you some time to settle in before we begin the first phase of our experiments." Over the next few days, Lawrence and Xena fell into a routine, exploring their shared space and adjusting to life under constant observation. They ate meals together, compared notes on their respective cultures, and slowly grew more comfortable in each other's presence. As the initial settling-in period came to an end, Dr. Hartwell introduced them to the next phase of the experiment: physical adaptation and cultural exchange. The research team had designed a series of activities to test the limits of both species' abilities. One morning, Lawrence entered the habitat's central chamber to find it transformed into an elaborate obstacle course. Xena was already there, her skin pulsing with curiosity. "This looks challenging," Lawrence said, eyeing a particularly complex series of suspended platforms and flexible tubes. "Indeed," Xena replied. "I believe some sections are designed to favor Sheliak physiology, while others seem more suited to humans." They began the course, each tackling the obstacles in their own way. Lawrence marveled at Xena's fluid movements as she navigated the Sheliak design sections with ease. However, when it came to the human-oriented obstacles, she struggled, her tentacle-like limbs ill-suited for the tasks. As Lawrence approached a section clearly designed for Sheliaks, he hesitated. The flexible tubes twisted and turned in ways his human joints weren't meant to bend. Taking a deep breath, he entered the maze-like structure. Halfway through, Lawrence felt a sharp pain in his shoulder as he attempted to contort his body around a particularly tight turn. He gasped, his arm suddenly refusing to cooperate. Zena, who had been watching nearby, immediately moved to assist him. "Lawrence, are you injured?" Her skin pulsed with concern as she reached out to support him. As Zena's cool, smooth skin made contact with his, Lawrence felt an unexpected jolt of sensation. His body responded instantly, a rush of warmth spreading through him. To his embarrassment, the thin fabric of his workout clothes did little to hide his physical reaction. Zena's luminous eyes widened as she noticed the change. "Lawrence, your body is exhibiting an unfamiliar response. Are you unwell?" Before Lawrence could stammer out a reply, Dr. Hartwell's voice came over the intercom. "Fascinating. It appears we've stumbled upon an unexpected area of study. Lawrence, Zena, please report to the medical bay for a full examination." As they made their way to the medical bay, Lawrence felt a mixture of embarrassment and curiosity. He hadn't expected to feel attraction towards Zena, but there was no denying the physical evidence. In the medical bay, Dr. Hartwell greeted them with barely held back excitement. "This is a groundbreaking development," she said, her eyes gleaming. "We need to explore this further. I'm proposing a new series of experiments focused on physical attraction between humans and Shellyacs." Over the next few weeks, Lawrence and Zena found themselves participating in activities designed to bring them into close physical proximity. Partner yoga sessions, adapted for their unique physiologies, became a daily occurrence. Trust-building exercises required sustained physical contact, pushing the boundaries of their comfort zones. During one such exercise, as Lawrence and Zena stood palm to palm, or in Zena's case, the equivalent appendage, he noticed a change in her bioluminescent patterns. The pulsing lights beneath her skin took on a new rhythm, more rapid and intense than he'd seen before. Dr. Hartwell's voice crackled over the intercom, barely containing her excitement. "Zena, your bioluminescent patterns are consistent with Shellyak arousal responses. This is unprecedented." Zena's skin flashed with a pattern Lawrence recognized as embarrassment. I was unaware my body was capable of such a response to a non-Shellyak," she said, her melodious voice tinged with confusion. As the days passed, Lawrence found himself looking forward to their shared activities with increasing anticipation. He caught himself studying Zena's alien form with new appreciation, noticing the graceful way she moved and the subtle beauty of her bioluminescent patterns. One evening, as they sat together in the habitat's small garden area, Zena turned to Lawrence. "I find myself experiencing unfamiliar sensations in your presence," she admitted. "Is this what humans call attraction?" Lawrence felt his heart rate increase. "I think it might be," he replied softly. "I've been feeling something similar towards you." As they gazed at each other, the air between them seemed to crackle with potential. Lawrence leaned in slightly, drawn by an irresistible force. Zena's skin pulsed with a pattern he'd never seen before, a swirling dance of light that seemed to beckon him closer. Just as their faces were inches apart, Dr. Hartwell's voice interrupted the moment. "Excellent progress, you two. We'll be introducing new scenarios tomorrow to further explore these developments. Get some rest." As they reluctantly parted ways for the night, Lawrence couldn't help but wonder what new discoveries awaited them. The line between subject and scientist was blurring, and he found himself eager to explore this uncharted territory of interspecies attraction. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that he and Zena would face them together, their growing bond a testament to the potential for understanding between their two species. Species. As Lawrence drifted off to sleep that night, his mind swirled with possibilities. The next morning, Dr. Hartwell gathered Lawrence and Zena in the habitat's main laboratory. Her eyes gleamed with excitement as she unveiled a sleek metallic device on the table before them. "This," she announced, "is our latest breakthrough. We're calling it the Sensory Enhancement Device, or SED for short. It's a fusion of human and Shellyak technologies designed to amplify physical sensations and emotional responses in both species." Lawrence eyed the device with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "How does it work?" Dr. Hartwell smiled. "It creates a neural link between two subjects, allowing each to experience a fraction of the other's sensory input. We believe it could be the key to bridging the gap between your vastly different physiologies." Zena's skin pulsed with a pattern Lawrence had come to recognize as intrigue. Fascinating. And you wish for us to test this device? Precisely, Dr. Hartwell nodded. We'll start with a simple touch experiment. Are you both willing to proceed? Lawrence and Zena exchanged a glance, an unspoken agreement passing between them. We're ready, Lawrence answered for both of them. The research team carefully attached the SED to both subjects. As Dr. Hartwell activated the device, Lawrence felt a tingling sensation at the base of his skull. He turned to Zena, reaching out to touch her arm as they had done countless times before. The moment their skin made contact, Lawrence gasped. A riot of color exploded behind his eyes, vivid waves of emotion washing over him. He could feel the subtle pulses of Zena's bioluminescence as if they were his own, each flicker carrying meaning and depth he had never before comprehended. Beside him, Zena trembled. Her luminous eyes widened as she experienced the warmth of Lawrence's skin with newfound intensity. "Lawrence," she whispered, her voice filled with awe, "I can feel your heartbeat through your fingertips." Dr. Hartwell's voice seemed to come from far away. "Incredible. The neural link is performing beyond our expectations. How do you both feel?" Lawrence struggled to find words. "It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way." Zena's skin flashed with patterns Lawrence now understood as agreement and excitement. "I concur. This experience is unlike anything I have ever known." Encouraged by the success of the initial test, Dr. Hartwell proposed a more ambitious experiment. "We'd like to set up a controlled environment within the habitat for a prolonged period of enhanced sensory connection. This will include areas with varying temperatures, textures, sounds, and even simulated environments from both Earth and Shellyax." Over the next few days, Lawrence and Zena explored this sensory playground while neurally linked. They walked barefoot through simulated grass, the tickle of each blade amplified and shared between them. They touched rough tree bark and smooth river stones, each texture a new discovery experienced through two sets of senses. In a simulated Shellyak environment, Lawrence marveled at bioluminescent flora, experiencing the subtle communication between plants and their surroundings through Zena's heightened senses. In turn, Zena delighted in the taste of human foods, the complex flavors bursting across her palate in ways she had never before experienced. As they navigated this shared sensory journey, Lawrence found himself developing a profound understanding of Zena's physical experiences. The complex bioluminescent communication of the Shellyax, once alien and incomprehensible, now made intuitive sense to him. He could read the subtle shifts in Zena's skin like a book, each pattern and pulse conveying emotions and thoughts with startling clarity. Zena, too, was undergoing a transformation. The nuances of human facial expressions and body language, once a mystery to her, became clear. She found herself instinctively understanding the slight furrow of Lawrence's brow, the quirk of his lips, the set of his shoulders. As they sat together in the simulated earth forest, hands intertwined, Lawrence felt a surge of emotion unlike anything he had experienced before. It wasn't just his own feelings. He could sense Zena's emotions intertwining with his own, creating a complex tapestry of shared experience. "Zena," he began, turning to face her. But before he could continue, a sharp pain lanced through his head. Beside him, Zena let out a cry of distress, her skin flashing with patterns of alarm and discomfort. Dr. Hartwell's voice came urgently over the intercom. "Lawrence, Zena, what's happening?" Lawrence tried to respond, but the pain intensified. He could feel Zena's distress amplifying his own, creating a feedback loop of sensation that threatened to overwhelm him. "The device," Zena managed to gasp out. "Something's wrong." As the research team rushed to their aid, Lawrence felt his consciousness begin to blur. Zena's thoughts and emotions flooded his mind, memories and sensations not his own, flashing behind his eyes. He clung to Zena's hand, anchoring himself in the storm of shared experience. The last thing Lawrence heard before losing consciousness was Dr. Hartwell's frantic voice. "The SED has malfunctioned. We can't disconnect them. Get Admiral Petrova on the line immediately. This situation has just become a lot more complicated." As darkness claimed him, Lawrence felt Zena's presence in his mind, a beacon of familiarity in a sea of confusion. Whatever was happening, they were in it together, their fates now inextricably linked in ways neither of them could have imagined. As consciousness slipped away, their minds intertwined even further, blurring the boundaries between human and Shellyak. Lawrence awoke to a cacophony of alarms and flashing lights. His head throbbed, and his vision swam with unfamiliar patterns. Beside him, Xena stirred, her skin pulsing erratically. "Xena," he croaked, reaching out to her. As their hands touched, a jolt of shared sensation coursed through them, weaker than before but still present. Dr. Hartwell's face appeared above them, etched with concern. "We need to move quickly. The SED malfunction has caused a severe neural entanglement. We're preparing an emergency separation procedure." As the medical team rushed around them, Lawrence felt a strange doubling of his senses. He could perceive the world through his own eyes, and simultaneously through Xena's alien perspective. Colors took on new dimensions, and the air itself seemed alive with bioluminescent communication. Xena's voice echoed in his mind. "Lawrence, I can feel your thoughts, your memories. They're becoming mine." He squeezed her hand, trying to anchor them both. "I know. I can see your world, your people. It's beautiful and terrifying." Dr. Hartwell's voice cut through their shared reverie. "We're moving you to the specialized medical chamber. Admiral Petrova has authorized the use of an experimental power source to fuel the separation device." As they were transferred to the chamber, Lawrence caught snippets of urgent conversations. Words like hybrid power core and potential side effects floated around him, but his mind was too overwhelmed to fully process their meaning. Inside the chamber, Lawrence and Xena were positioned on separate beds, a complex array of equipment surrounding them. Dr. Hartwell's face appeared on a screen above them. "We're going to initiate the electromagnetic pulse sequence," she explained. "It may cause some discomfort, but it's our best chance to safely separate your neural link." As the device hummed to life, Lawrence felt a tingling sensation spread from the base of his skull throughout his body. Beside him, Xena's skin flashed with rapid patterns of distress and confusion. Suddenly, a violent surge of energy ripped through the chamber. Lawrence's body arched off the bed, every nerve ending on fire. Through their link, he could feel Xena's agony mirroring his own. The world around them dissolved into chaos. Alarms blared, and the acrid smell of burning electronics filled the air. Through the haze of pain, Lawrence saw his skin beginning to glow with faint bioluminescent patterns. A deafening explosion rocked the facility. The chamber's reinforced walls buckled, and debris rained down around them. In the confusion, Lawrence felt himself being pulled to his feet. "We must evacuate," Xena's voice cut through the din. Her normally fluid movements were jerky and uncoordinated, almost human-like. They stumbled out of the chamber, supporting each other as they navigated the smoke-filled corridors. Emergency lights pulsed in angry red, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "This way," Lawrence rasped, instinctively interpreting the facility's layout through Xena's residual knowledge. They made their way through a series of twisting passages, narrowly avoiding falling debris and sparking electrical panels. As they rounded a corner, a massive bulkhead slammed down behind them, sealing off the section they had just left. The habitat's quarantine protocols had engaged, trapping them in an isolated area of the facility. Lawrence leaned against a wall, catching his breath. His mind felt clearer now, the overwhelming flood of shared consciousness reduced to a trickle. He looked at Xena, really seeing her for the first time since the separation attempt. "Are you okay?" he asked, surprised to find he could still interpret the subtle flashes of light beneath her skin. Xena's luminous eyes met his. "I am functioning, but changed. I can sense your emotional state with unusual clarity." Lawrence nodded, understanding. "I can read your bioluminescence. It's like I've retained some of your abilities." A distant rumble shook the floor beneath them, reminding them of their precarious situation. Lawrence scanned their surroundings, looking for a way out. "There," Xena pointed to a narrow maintenance shaft. "That passage may lead us to an external airlock." As they made their way through the cramped tunnel, Lawrence marveled at how naturally they worked together, anticipating each other's movements and sharing unspoken communication. Their shared ordeal had forged a connection that transcended their physical differences. Emerging from the shaft, they found themselves in a small antechamber. A reinforced door marked with warning symbols stood between them and the airlock beyond. The locking mechanism requires both human and Shellyak input, Xena observed, studying the control panel. Lawrence stepped forward, placing his hand on the scanner. Together, then. As Xena's appendage joined his on the panel, a spark of electricity passed between them. The door's locking mechanism began to disengage, accompanied by the hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond the airlock, they could see the stars through a small viewport. Freedom was close, but the dangers of hard vacuum and the unknown status of rescue efforts gave them pause. Lawrence turned to Xena, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their unique bond a testament to the potential for connection between their species. As the airlock door slowly began to open, they braced themselves for the next phase of their journey, unaware of the diplomatic storm brewing beyond the habitat's walls or the far-reaching consequences their escape would have for human-Shellyak relations. As the airlock door slowly began to open, Lawrence and Xena braced themselves for the next phase of their journey. However, their relief was short-lived as they quickly realized the extent of the damage to the habitat's systems. "The emergency override is malfunctioning," Lawrence said, his eyes scanning the flickering control panel. "We'll need to operate it manually." Xena's skin pulsed with patterns of concern. "That requires simultaneous activation from both inside and outside the airlock." Lawrence nodded grimly. "I'll stay here and manage the internal controls. You'll need to go outside in a protective suit to handle the external mechanisms." As Xena donned the protective gear, Lawrence felt a twinge of unease. Their newfound connection made the impending separation, however brief, feel almost physical. "Be careful out there," he said, helping her secure the helmet. Xena's luminous eyes met his. "You as well, Lawrence. Our bond may be altered, but it remains strong." With a final shared glance, Xena stepped into the airlock. Lawrence watched as she cycled through and disappeared from view, then turned his attention to the internal controls. Moments later, a violent tremor shook the habitat. Lawrence stumbled, his hands slamming against the wall for support. A sickening crunch echoed through the chamber as a section of the ceiling collapsed, pinning his leg beneath a heavy beam. Pain lanced through his body, but Lawrence forced himself to remain calm. Drawing on his newly acquired understanding of Shellyak biology, he focused on regulating his heart rate and body temperature. The techniques, alien yet familiar, helped him manage the pain and conserve oxygen in the rapidly failing life support system. Outside, Xena worked methodically on the external airlock controls, unaware of Lawrence's predicament. As she reached for the final sequence, static burst through her helmet's comm system. "Lawrence," she called out, her voice infused with concern, but only garbled noise answered her. Inside, Lawrence struggled against the debris trapping his leg. He could feel the reinforced structure of the habitat groaning around him, threatening further collapse. The lack of response from Xena sent a spike of fear through him, but he pushed it aside, focusing instead on survival. Xena, realizing something had gone terribly wrong, made a split-second decision. She abandoned the airlock controls and began searching for an alternate entry point. Her body moved with unexpected grace and strength, a lingering effect of their neural link experiment. As she navigated the treacherous exterior of the habitat, Xena's enhanced senses picked up movement within. She paused, her alien eyes narrowing as she peered through a viewport. What she saw chilled her to her core. A group of Shellyak, their bioluminescence patterns unfamiliar and hostile, were moving purposefully through the habitat. With a jolt of realization, Xena recognized them as extremists, a fringe group vehemently opposed to human Shellyak cooperation. Xena quickened her pace, locating a maintenance hatch that would allow her re-entry. As she cycled through the airlock, she steeled herself for confrontation. The extremists had likely caused the initial sabotage, and now they stood between her and Lawrence. Inside the habitat, Lawrence continued his desperate attempts to free himself. The life support systems were failing rapidly, and he could feel the temperature dropping. He closed his eyes, focusing on the Shellyak techniques to slow his metabolism and conserve oxygen. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps caught his attention. Hope surged within him, only to be quickly replaced by dread as he saw not Xena, but a group of unfamiliar Shellyacs enter the chamber. The lead Shellyak skin flashed with patterns of disgust and hatred. "The human survives. We must complete our mission." Lawrence's mind raced, searching for a way out. He opened his mouth to speak, to reason with them, but was cut short as alarms began blaring throughout the habitat. "The purge has begun," one of the extremists announced, their bioluminescence pulsing with grim satisfaction. In that moment, Xena burst into the chamber, her movements fluid and powerful. "Stop!" she called out, her voice carrying an authority that made even the extremist pause. The lead extremist turned, his patterns shifting to shock and then anger. "Traitor," he hissed, "you would defend this human?" Xena stood her ground, her own bioluminescence conveying a complex mix of perseverance and appeal. "This path leads only to destruction for both our species. We must find a way to coexist." For a tense moment, it seemed as though her words might sway them. Then, without warning, the lead extremist lunged at her. The ensuing fight was unlike anything Lawrence had ever witnessed. Xena moved with inhuman speed and agility, her body seeming to flow around her attackers. She used the low gravity to her advantage, rebounding off walls and ceilings with precision. As Xena fought, Lawrence redoubled his efforts to free himself. He could feel the air growing thin, knew that time was running out. The purge device the extremists had activated was counting down, threatening not just his life, but the lives of every human in the facility. Xena dispatched the last of the extremists just as the purge device reached its final sequence. Her eyes met Lawrence's across the chamber, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. Without hesitation, Xena rushed to Lawrence's side. Her hands moved swiftly, assessing the debris pinning him down. "I cannot move this in time," she said, her voice tight with tension. Lawrence nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. "Xena, you need to get out of here. Save yourself." But Xena was already shaking her head, her bioluminescence pulsing with a drive that needed no translation. "No, Lawrence, we face this together." As the purge device hummed to life, Xena placed her hands on Lawrence's shoulders. Her skin began to glow with an intensity he had never seen before, the patterns shifting and swirling in complex sequences. "What are you doing?" Lawrence asked, feeling a strange tingling sensation spread across his skin. "Creating a shield," Xena replied, her voice strained with effort. "My bioluminescence. I believe I can protect you from the purge." As the room filled with a sickly green light, Xena's glow intensified. Lawrence watched in awe as a shimmering field of bioluminescence enveloped him, its patterns mirroring the complexity of Xena's own skin. The purge wave hit them with the force of a physical blow. Lawrence felt the shield around him vibrate, saw Xena's form shudder with the effort of maintaining it. For what seemed like an eternity, they remained locked in this desperate embrace, Xena's bioluminescence the only barrier between Lawrence and certain death. When the wave finally passed, Lawrence looked up to see Xena swaying on her feet, her normally vibrant skin now pale and dull. As she collapsed, he reached out to catch her, his own body protesting the movement. "Xena!" he called out, cradling her unresponsive form. "Stay with me!" In the distance, he could hear the sounds of approaching rescue teams. But as he held Xena's limp body, Lawrence knew that their ordeal was nowhere near the end. The real challenge, saving Xena's life and navigating the diplomatic fallout of this incident, was just beginning. The real challenge, saving Xena's life and navigating the diplomatic fallout of this incident, was just unfolding. As the rescue team rushed into the chamber, Lawrence felt a wave of relief wash over him. Medics swarmed around them, their faces a mix of concern and astonishment as they took in the scene. "We need to get them both to the medical bay immediately," one of the human doctors shouted, her eyes darting between Lawrence and Xena. Lawrence winced as they carefully extracted his leg from beneath the debris. The pain was intense, but his focus remained on Xena's still form. As they were loaded onto stretchers, he reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm. "Stay with her," he urged the medics. "She saved my life." The journey to the medical bay was a blur of motion and urgent voices. Lawrence drifted in and out of consciousness, the combination of pain and exhaustion taking its toll. When he fully came to, he found himself in a sterile room, surrounded by beeping machines and worried faces. Dr. Hartwell, the lead xenobiologist, stood at his bedside, her brow furrowed in concentration as she studied a datapad. "Lawrence," she said, noticing he was awake. "How are you feeling?" "I'll live," Lawrence replied, his voice hoarse. "Xena?" Dr. Hartwell's expression tightened. "We're doing everything we can, but her condition is unique. The neural link you shared has altered her physiology in ways we're still trying to understand." As Dr. Hartwell explained the situation, Lawrence felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Xena's body was rejecting standard celiac treatments, her altered biology presenting an unprecedented challenge to the medical team. "There might be a way," Dr. Hartwell said, her voice cautious but determined. "We believe a hybrid serum created from your DNA and celiac regenerative compounds could stabilize her condition, but it's risky and the effects could be unpredictable." Lawrence didn't hesitate. "Do it, whatever it takes." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Lawrence watched as human and celiac medical staff worked in tandem, their previous differences set aside in the face of this crisis. He submitted to a barrage of tests and extractions, each one bringing a fresh wave of discomfort. As the team began synthesizing the hybrid serum, Lawrence experienced a strange sensation. His senses seemed to shift, the world around him taking on an alien quality. Colors intensified, and he could perceive patterns of energy flowing through the air. "It's a residual effect of the neural link," Dr. Hartwell explained, noticing his disorientation. "Your brain is tapping into celiac sensory perception." The preparation of the serum was a delicate process, each step carefully monitored by both human and celiac scientists. Lawrence watched in fascination as they modified a medical stasis chamber, integrating technologies from both species to create a suitable environment for Xena. When the serum was finally ready, Lawrence held his breath as they administered it to Xena. The effect was immediate and startling. Her bioluminescent patterns, which had been faint and erratic, suddenly blazed with renewed intensity. But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that something unexpected was happening. Xena's body began to change, her form shifting in subtle but unmistakable ways. Features that seemed almost human began to emerge, blending with her celiac physiology in a way that left the medical team stunned. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Hartwell muttered, her eyes wide as she studied the readouts. "Her body is adapting to the human genetic material at an astonishing rate." Suddenly, the lights in the medical bay flickered. Alarms blared as power fluctuations rippled through the facility. Lawrence sat up, ignoring the pain in his leg as he realized the source of the disturbance. "It's Xena," he said, his voice filled with certainty. "Her bioluminescence. It's generating electromagnetic pulses." Dr. Hartwell nodded grimly. "The pulses are interfering with our systems. If we can't stabilize her soon, we could lose life support throughout the facility." Lawrence swung his legs over the side of the bed, driven by an instinct he couldn't explain. "Let me near her," he said. "I think I can help." Despite objections from some of the medical staff, Dr. Hartwell gave her approval. As Lawrence approached Xena's stasis chamber, he felt a pull, as if an invisible cord connected them. The closer he got, the more the electromagnetic disturbances seemed to subside. "It's working," Dr. Hartwell said, her voice filled with a mix of relief and scientific curiosity. "Your presence is stabilizing her somehow." Encouraged by this development, Lawrence placed his hand on the stasis chamber's specially designed access port. The moment his skin made contact with Xena's, a surge of energy coursed through him. The world around him seemed to fall away as his consciousness expanded, once again intertwining with Xena's. Through this renewed connection, Lawrence could sense Xena's struggle, feel her body adapting and changing. He focused his thoughts, willing her to fight, to stabilize, to return to him. As if in response, Xena's vital signs began to improve rapidly. "It's incredible," Dr. Hartwell breathed, watching the monitors in awe. "The hybrid serum is integrating perfectly now. It's as if your connection is guiding her healing process." As Xena's condition stabilized, Lawrence became aware of a new sensation. Through their link, he could perceive the world as she did, a kaleidoscope of bioluminescent patterns and electromagnetic fields. It was beautiful and alien, yet somehow familiar. The medical team, seeing the positive results, prepared to bring Xena out of stasis. Lawrence maintained his physical contact, his heart racing as the chamber began its waking sequence. As the protective field around Xena dissipated, he held his breath, unsure of what to expect. Slowly, Xena's eyes opened, their luminous glow now tinged with a hint of human-like irises. Her gaze locked onto Lawrence, and in that moment, he knew that whatever changes she had undergone, the essence of who she was remained intact. "Lawrence," Xena said, her voice a blend of familiar tones and new resonances. "We are changed." As Xena began to sit up, revealing the full extent of her transformation, the medical bay erupted into a flurry of activity. Dr. Hartwell rushed forward, her team close behind, eager to begin assessments and tests. Lawrence, still connected to Xena both physically and mentally, braced himself for what was to come. The implications of their shared ordeal and Xena's extraordinary transformation were only beginning to unfold, promising to reshape the future of human-Shellyak relations in ways no one could have predicted. As the chamber fully opened, Xena emerged, her appearance a startling blend of human and Shellyak features. Lawrence's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight of her. Xena's skin retained its bioluminescent properties, but now possessed a warmth and texture reminiscent of human flesh. Her eyes, once purely alien, now held recognizable irises that glowed with an otherworldly light. The graceful, fluid lines of her Shellyak form remained, but were now balanced with more human-like proportions. As Xena took her first steps out of the chamber, her movements were unsteady. Her eyes darted around the room, pupils dilating rapidly as she struggled to process the sensory input from her new hybrid nervous system. Lawrence felt a wave of disorientation wash over him, an echo of Xena's experience transmitted through their physical connection. "Dr. Hartwell," Lawrence called out, his voice strained. "Something's wrong. She's overwhelmed." The doctor rushed forward, a hypo spray in hand. "It's all right," she assured them both, administering the neural stabilizer to Xena. This should help regulate her neural pathways. As the stabilizer took effect, Xena's erratic movements calmed. Her gaze focused on Lawrence, and he felt a familiar presence brush against his mind. Their neural link, which he had thought severed, had re-established itself in a new form. "Lawrence," Xena's voice was a blend of her original tones and new, more human-like inflections. "I can sense you, but it's different now. Controlled." Dr. Hartwell's eyes widened as she observed their interaction. "Fascinating. It seems your neural link has adapted along with Xena's physiology. This could revolutionize human Shellyak communication." As the medical team began their initial assessments, Admiral Petrova entered the room, his face a mask of professional concern. "Dr. Hartwell, what's the situation?" The doctor quickly briefed the Admiral on Xena's transformation and the re-established neural link. Petrova listened intently, his brow furrowing as he considered the implications. "This changes everything," he said, pulling out his comm device. "I need to contact both governments immediately. We're looking at an emergency summit to address this development." As Petrova stepped away to make his calls, Lawrence noticed a commotion outside the medical bay. Through the transparent walls, he could see both human and Shellyak staff members gathering, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Dr. Hartwell," he said, gesturing towards the crowd, "we might need additional security." The doctor nodded, already tapping commands into her datapad. "I'm on it. We can't risk any unauthorized access or potential threats." As security personnel moved to disperse the onlookers, Dr. Hartwell's team began a more comprehensive series of tests. Xena submitted to each scan and sample collection with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, her newly expressive face revealing a range of emotions that would have been impossible to discern before. "Your DNA has undergone remarkable changes," Dr. Hartwell explained as she reviewed the results. "You've retained many of your Shellyak traits, but they've been enhanced by human genetic material. Your physical abilities, in particular, seem to have been significantly augmented." To demonstrate, Dr. Hartwell asked Xena to perform a series of physical tests. Lawrence watched in awe as Xena effortlessly lifted weights that would have challenged even the strongest human, then proceeded to navigate an impromptu obstacle course with inhuman grace and agility. "Incredible," Dr. Hartwell murmured, her fingers flying over her datapad. "You've combined the strength and flexibility of a Shellyak with human endurance and adaptability." As the test continued, Lawrence became aware of a strange sensation spreading across his skin. Looking down, he was startled to see a faint bioluminescent sheen developing on his arms. "Dr. Hartwell," he called out, his voice tight with concern. "Something's happening to me." The doctor rushed over, her eyes widening as she took in the sight. "It seems your continued connection with Xena is having some unexpected effects. We'll need to run some tests on you as well." As the medical team scrambled to assess Lawrence's condition, Xena approached him, her movements now smooth and controlled. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. As their skin made contact, their bioluminescent patterns synchronized, creating a mesmerizing display. "I can feel what you're feeling," Xena said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's as if our minds are overlapping, but we're still separate individuals." Lawrence nodded, experiencing the same sensation. He could sense Xena's thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own, yet there was no loss of self, no blurring of identities. It was a level of intimacy and understanding he had never thought possible. As they stood there, hands clasped and bioluminescence pulsing in unison, Lawrence became acutely aware of the magnitude of what they were experiencing. Their personal journey had become intertwined with the fate of two species, and the implications were staggering. Dr. Hartwell's voice cut through his reverie. "Lawrence, Xena, I need you both to listen carefully. Admiral Petrova has arranged for you to participate in the upcoming diplomatic summit. Your unique bond and Xena's hybrid physiology are going to be crucial in shaping future human-Shellyak relations." Lawrence felt a mix of excitement and apprehension at the prospect. He looked at Xena, sensing similar emotions from her. They were about to step onto an interstellar stage, their personal experiences becoming the focal point of discussions that would shape the future of both their species. As the medical bay buzzed with activity around them, Lawrence and Xena remained connected, their linked hands emitting a soft, synchronized glow. They faced an uncertain future, but they would face it together, their unique bond serving as a bridge between two worlds. Outside the facility, unbeknownst to those within, a group of Shellyak extremists began to gather, their faces twisted with disgust as they received news of Xena's transformation. To them, this hybrid state was an abomination, a threat to the purity of their species. As they plotted their next move, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of Lawrence and Xena's newfound abilities and the strength of their bond. As they plotted their next move, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of Lawrence and Xena's newfound abilities and the strength of their connection. The diplomatic summit loomed on the horizon, casting a shadow of anticipation over the research facility. Lawrence and Xena spent their days in intensive preparation, alternating between medical examinations and briefings on interstellar politics. Their unique bond grew stronger with each passing hour, their thoughts and emotions intertwining in a delicate dance of human and Shellyak consciousness. However, their peaceful preparations were shattered in an instant. The facility's alarms blared to life, their shrill wail cutting through the air like a knife. Security personnel burst into the room, faces grim with urgency. "We've been breached," one of them shouted over the cacophony. "Shellyak extremists have infiltrated the perimeter. We need to move you to a secure location immediately." Lawrence's heart raced as he grasped Xena's hand, their bioluminescence pulsing in shared anxiety. They were quickly ushered through winding corridors, the sound of distant explosions echoing ominously behind them. The security team led them deeper into the complex, towards a fortified bunker designed for such emergencies. As they rounded a corner, a deafening blast rocked the facility. The shockwave sent Lawrence and Xena stumbling, momentarily separated from their escorts. When the dust settled, they found themselves alone in an unfamiliar section of the complex, cut off from their security detail. "We need to keep moving," Lawrence said, his voice tight with tension. He could feel Xena's agreement through their neural link, a mixture of willpower and fear coloring their shared consciousness. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, relying on Xena's enhanced strength to clear debris and Lawrence's newly acquired Shellyak sensory perception to detect approaching threats. Their progress was slow but steady, each step bringing them closer to safety, or so they hoped. Suddenly, Lawrence felt a prickle of alarm through their bond. Xena's bioluminescence flared, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "They're close," she whispered, her hybrid vocal cords producing a sound that was both beautiful and unsettling. No sooner had the words left her lips than a group of Shellyak extremists rounded the corner ahead of them. Their alien features were contorted in disgust as they beheld Xena's transformed appearance. "Abomination!" one of them hissed, raising a weapon. Lawrence stepped forward, his diplomatic training kicking in despite the dire circumstances. "Wait," he called out, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "We don't have to resort to violence. Let's talk about this." The lead extremist hesitated, his weapon wavering. Lawrence seized the opportunity, reaching out with his mind, trying to establish a neural link similar to the one he shared with Xena. It was a bold strategy, but he had to try. To his surprise, he felt a connection form. Images and emotions flooded his consciousness. His first encounter with Xena, their harrowing escape, the pain and joy of their transformation. He pushed these experiences towards the extremist, sharing the profound journey that had led them to this moment. The Shellyak leader staggered, overwhelmed by the unexpected mental intrusion. His companions looked on in confusion as he lowered his weapon, eyes wide with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. In that moment of hesitation, Xena acted. Her bioluminescence pulsed in a complex pattern, a form of Shellyak communication that Lawrence could now partially understand. She was sending a message, appealing to their shared heritage while showcasing her new hybrid nature. The extremists faltered, their persistence visibly weakening in the face of this unprecedented display. Lawrence pressed his advantage, his voice calm and steady. "We are not your enemies. What we represent is not the destruction of your culture, but the potential for growth and understanding between our species." The tense standoff stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, almost imperceptibly, the lead extremist's posture changed. His weapon lowered further, a sign of acquiescence. Before anyone could react further, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. The facility's security forces had finally caught up, their weapons trained on the extremist group. The crisis was averted, but the implications of what had transpired would resonate far beyond the walls of the research facility. In the aftermath of the attack, footage of Lawrence and Xena's actions spread rapidly across both human and Shellyak networks. Their seamless cooperation, the visible manifestation of their unique bond, captivated audiences on both worlds. Public opinion began to shift, with many seeing their partnership as a symbol of hope for future relations between the species. As the day of the summit dawned, Lawrence and Xena found themselves at the center of a diplomatic maelstrom. They stood side by side before the assembled delegates, their joined hands emitting a soft, pulsating glow. Lawrence took a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. "Distinguished representatives," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "What we present to you today is not just a scientific curiosity or a diplomatic oddity. It is a glimpse into a possible future, one where the strengths of our species are combined, where understanding transcends the boundaries of biology." Xena stepped forward, her hybrid features drawing gasps from the audience. When she spoke, her voice carried the harmonic resonance of her Shellyak heritage, tempered with human inflection. "We stand before you as living proof that cooperation between our species is not only possible, but potentially transformative." As they continued their testimony, Lawrence could feel the mood in the room shifting. The initial skepticism gave way to cautious optimism, then to genuine excitement. By the time they concluded their presentation, the air was buzzing with possibility. The summit's final session saw the announcement of a groundbreaking interspecies exchange program. Under strict ethical guidelines, volunteers from both species would be given the opportunity to explore the potential of human Shellyak hybridization. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, their excited chatter filling the air, Lawrence turned to Xena. Through their neural link, he could sense her mix of relief, joy, and anticipation for the future. They had taken the first step on a journey that would reshape the galaxy. But their personal journey was just the beginning. As they prepared to embark on their new role as ambassadors, Lawrence and Xena knew that challenges lay ahead. Yet as they stood together, their bioluminescence synchronizing in a beautiful display, they were ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.